Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Student Ministry Podcast. My name is Jared Berry.
And my name's Mark Freeman, and together we have over 30 years of youth ministry experience.
We created this resource to be of value to you and your youth ministry team. Hopefully you enjoy it, you benefit from it. Our goal is to invest in you as youth leaders so that you can invest in your students.
If you found this useful, please like and share with as many people as possible so that we can see better student ministries.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to Better Student Ministry Podcast. My name is Jared.
My name is Mark.
Glad to be back.
We just cut you right out.
Yeah.
We're going to introduce you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get a massive introduction.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll come in about 35 seconds.
We maybe 10, 15 minutes we'll get to him.
Yeah, we like to have a little banter at the start, talk about our lives. So
Yeah, in fact, just close up right here, right now, Jared. We're here in studio by ourselves.
Yeah, it is good to be back. Our last episode was great. Got a lot of great feedback. We talked about should I quit youth ministry, and it was cool to hear some messages of people like, "Hey, thanks. I was
People
really
quitting all over the world, really.
Well, spoiler, we said don't quit.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So, but really good to be back, and we're kind of excited to talk about the topic today.
Yeah.
Because it's so important in our experience of youth ministry and working with leaders who are doing it now, the issue of addiction, and so many people are struggling, hurting, broken, and so we're really excited, and we're more excited because we've got a great friend with us as a guest. So Paul Mead is our guest today. Paul is the director, New York State Director of New York Teen
President,
Challenge,
CEO.
President, CEO.
Guru.
It's
a big deal.
A big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, if you're not getting that from what we're saying, this guy is massive. And but even before that, a friend of ours, I've met Paul, I don't know, several years ago, and just always respected him for his authenticity, his realness, his love for people, and his he's unafraid to share his brokenness, both of his past and even his current, his struggles and the things he's gone through. And I find it so refreshing.
Yeah.
So,
And what's beautiful, Paul, is you're not just sharing it so people will be like, wow, Paul's a great guy. And man, God's doing him. Like, you're sharing it so that God would be glorified because he's transformed your life, rescued you, and now set you in a trajectory and a mission to point as many people as possible to Christ. And that's why we feel comfortable having this conversation with you as well. Paul, thanks so much for sharing with us today.
yeah. So, Paul, tell us, for those of you who don't know your story, I think it's important, before we dive in, we're going to talk about addiction. How do we help young people who are struggling with addiction, or even if it's not to the point of addiction yet, but maybe there's use happening, whether it's marijuana, alcohol, whatever, even pornography, whatever sort of addiction is taking place, or pre-addiction, how do we help them? But before we dive into that, it'd be important, I think, for people to learn your story and why you're kind of an expert to talk to us about this. So not to put any pressure on you, but.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here today. And, I was thinking when you asked me yesterday, would I join you? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely want to. And then what do you share, right? Like, where do you begin? And so I think I just want to take maybe our audience back to somewhat of the beginning, if you will, where really, I thought, the way I grew up was pretty normal.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were divorced, but that wasn't uncommon, really, in where we were. And my grandmother raised me, if you will. But even that, I had a lot of friends where grandparents were kind of raising them up, and parents were separated. So I really thought everything was pretty normal for me, and really, I did well in school. I had good grades in school. Well, when I loved athletics, I was considered a good athlete in my Class D school. Now, mind you, I graduated high school ultimately with 34 people in my class. So you find out later on, maybe you're not a great athlete.
I was the top 30.
Right. And so, but really, good grades. And when I was going to school, like, you had to get good grades if you wanted to play sports. Like, I don't know if that's the same anymore. I don't know the whole deal there. But so I did well in school and played baseball, ran track and field. played basketball and soccer. They were like the main sports growing up. So I was into athletics and did what I had to do in school. And all along, though, even at a young age, I think I might have been like 10, right? Growing up in a small town of Lexington, New York, just few people. Like I was heavily influenced by some teenagers that were in town,
Yeah.
and and I think I maybe smoked like my first cigarette when I was 10, you know, and really didn't think a lot of it. And then it's 11 and it's, your first can of beer. And then it's 12 and, well, I'll smoke a joint. That's marijuana, too. I don't
Thanks
know.
for our listeners who don't.
Trust me, our listeners know.
They only
don't
know
know
it as cannabis.
Right. I didn't know if a joint, like, I'm like, that's like a place you go. No, this was like we smoked it. And and so it was like this progression or digression, however you want to look at it, of like, here it was, it's cigarettes, it's alcohol, it's marijuana. And all of those things, well, in particular, alcohol and marijuana got in the way of some of my athletic endeavors
Yeah.
because, like, I got caught in school with marijuana. I got kicked off the basketball team. I mean, that broke my heart.
Yeah.
And yet, even though it broke my heart, now I was kicked off. Well, what did that do?
Pushed you into it even more, right?
I want to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The frustration. And so I think it was all of these things growing up that I always took it to another level. I always went one step further. It just kept going. And then with pills and back in the day, again, so much drug use has changed today from when I was using, but we used hallucinogenics and that was a whole nother story. And so I kind of made it through. I played ball when I didn't get in trouble, right? When I was on the team, and then headed off to college, and realized when I went to college that I was nowheres near the athlete that I thought I was in my Class D school. The competition ramped up, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, I was like really good, and now I'm like second string.
Yeah.
And I began to really spend a lot more time at the bar, a lot more time with people that maybe I shouldn't have been with, and it didn't take long for me to realize that the people in my life, the people, the places, and the things in my life were not healthy. And because the people, places, and things in my life were not healthy, neither was I. And really just, I dropped out of college. I was unhappy. I just wasn't fulfilling and got a job and never satisfied in a job. I was one of those people, and maybe our listeners, maybe understand what I'm talking about, where like I would start out a job and like everybody would be like, wow, this guy is amazing. He's, he's going to be great here and this is all going to work out. And then like, a month later I wouldn't show.
Yeah.
I just was unhappy. I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't want to get up in the morning and go do it. Right. So what did I do? I used. Because everything that my track record followed me, if you will, from growing up, a young guy who started out with cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana, and other forms of drugs, just continued.
Yeah.
And
was it an escape? Was it an escape thing for you, or what was the or were you just bored? Or
yeah, it was fun.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it was fun. I liked being around. You know, it's interesting. You can really like, or I really liked being around the people, places, and things
Mm.
that that were. I just didn't like the results.
Mm.
I liked hanging out with the fun people. I liked getting buzzed, getting drunk, using drugs. I liked all that. I just didn't like what came after it.
Mm.
But I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I didn't. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I can't remember the exact time that I tried not to, but I kept doing it. It's what I did. So really, um, got a job, this job, that job, another job. Never really content in any of it. Continued to use throughout. But when you don't have a lot of money, you can only use so much, and so my drug use was absolutely there, but it wasn't intensified where I really thought it was a problem. I was functional, if you
Right.
will. Early 1990s, 1991, working construction, and had a pretty bad accident. No sense of going into exactly, how it happened, but I fell 30 feet off a roof in the middle of January. The ground was frozen. And when I hit the ground, uh, that really, the moment I hit the ground, my life began to change
Mm.
forever um, in a really bad way. And ended up in Albany Medical Center for over a month. Really severe injuries. Ultimately, had to be in and out of a wheelchair for a couple of years.
Wow.
And what came with that was a windfall, if you will, of $750,000.
Mm.
And that money, um, well, money was something I never had, and so when that kind of money came into my life, um, and I made a decision not to get advice on how to deal with that money, I I took off on a journey
Mm.
to to end anything that was unhappy in my life.
Mm.
And the way I found happiness was drugs. And I had already been introduced to cocaine, prior to this construction accident. But after this accident, I was introduced to crack cocaine, which was a cocaine stripped down to its most raw
Mm.
form. And instead of sniffing it, I was smoking it. Um, Immediate um, neurotransmitters taking off inside of me that I had never experienced before. The kind of euphoria that that was hard to describe, but I know this: I loved it.
Mm.
How long? I'm curious. It may be helpful for people that are listening that maybe don't have any experience with drugs. Like, so you're smoking crack cocaine. Like, what is that? How long does that last? I know you said it's immediate. What's the
Yeah, yeah, it was
and then
immediate.
what's the effects afterward? Does it mess you up mentally, groggy? What is that?
Yeah, so it was immediate,
Yeah.
and then that immediate was gone in about 15 minutes,
Oh, wow.
and then I would try to recreate it.
Yeah.
The thing about crack cocaine is that um, it's hard to recreate.
Mm.
It I couldn't stop, but I also couldn't recreate, and so
You're always chasing the first high, right? Like the first.
consistently,
Yeah.
Mm.
and which really led to anywheres between um, $300 to $1,000 a day
Oh, wow.
of
Wow.
of crack cocaine use, and $750,000 sounds like a lot of money,
Mm.
but not if you're spending $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
And so I continued on this journey. It's interesting as I reflect back. It was the cigarettes, right? At 10, and the alcohol at 11, and the marijuana at 12 that made it so easy for me
Mm.
to go right into I was set up for I set myself up for failure, if you will,
Yeah.
in the drug world, because when I had all this money, I already had a past with
Right.
drugs,
Right.
and so
It's easy to justify a little bit more and a little bit, and you feel like you're taking baby steps. You don't realize how far you've come from step A to step QRST, right?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
perfectly said, Mark. People talk about, oh, that's a gateway drug, and I think that, it's so easy to go, that's just a word. That's real.
Mm.
You start with marijuana. It's what you said. It's easy to justify when your friend shows up because of the people, places, and things.
Yeah.
Your friend shows up and says, "Hey, how about this?
Yeah.
Why not give it a try?"
Yeah.
And the same thing is true of other addiction areas as well, right? Pornography being one of those areas as well, right? Maybe it starts with just some innocent scrolling on your social media, and you're watching fitness videos, and that turns into, more and more and more, and then all of a sudden you're like where you started, and now you're into hardcore who knows what kind of stuff. And it was just this slow transition into the depth that you're now trapped in. And yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Really
too, a lot of the gateway. I didn't have the same story as you, but I did have pretty heavy past and experience with drugs, and for me, the gateway piece was the finding something that allowed me to escape. And once you find that thing, it's very hard to put that down. Now, it's not a real escape, as we all know, but in the moment, it's like, oh, okay, I can not deal with my pain. I can avoid this. Like you talked about wanting to kind of, once you got that money, it was like, all right, my life's goal is now to not feel bad and feel good
every day.
every day.
Every day.
And so I think once you open that box up, it's really hard to put it back in. But the other lesson is, even if kids are not into drugs, maybe it's something else. Like we all have this tendency of, we want to find things, could be food, could be Netflix, could be pornography,
Yeah.
to numb our pain, to avoid wrestling with the challenges that we have in life.
Yeah,
So,
even stuff like approval, right? Like I'll say this little lie so that you don't think badly of me or differently of me. Well, now that lie starts to grow because I have to defend it, and I have to and it's amazing how these little things will balloon up.
yeah.
So
All right.
quickly.
So how old are you at this point?
Yeah. So now I'm in my 30s.
In your 30s. You got a lot of money that is very quickly
Dwindling.
vanishing.
Going fast.
It's being smoked away. Okay. What's your lifestyle like? Are you living in a nice place? What's that? Are you working or?
It's so interesting. No,
Okay.
I literally lived in taxi cabs, bar rooms, and hotel rooms.
Oh wow.
Sometimes I would have 2 or 3 hotel rooms a night, because I grew paranoid that people were going to find me, and I had lots of money, and so I would shuffle myself all over, creation, and try to stay hid, away from authorities and away from people who might want to do me harm.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was so caught in this cycle of addiction that I didn't take care of myself. It was just all about getting high, literally about getting high, and which ultimately ended in being homeless in the streets of Albany, New York, and with an addiction. I was broke, homeless, helpless and hopeless,
So
smoking crack and dying.
how long did it take you to burn through all that money?
3 years.
3 years. Wow. Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah, 3 years. Ultimately homeless in the street, with an addiction that was, full bore.
Yep.
And so, I began stealing. I started stealing from like grocery stores, and, I would go in and take very expensive things that the drug community needed, sell them for half price, which ultimately ended me up in, jail. And I've, gosh, I've been locked up in New York, and then I took off to Florida because I thought, location would change things, but I still, wherever you go, there you are, and I was locked up in Florida. Then I tried North Carolina and was put in jail there, and got locked up in Georgia. Like everywhere I went.
That's an interesting, and I've seen this in the lives of our youth and our teenagers and young adults that I know as well. That idea of, all right, I just need to change the location, right? I need to get away from these friends, or I need to change the place that I'm at. And like you said, you are still wherever you are, right? So if you haven't dealt with the you issue, you just bring that with you to the next place. And it's with good intention that families will be like, all right, we got to get our kids out of here. We got to go somewhere else. And yet it's not just a location thing. Now, it is a contributing factor, but if you haven't taken care of the issue that's going on inside your own heart, then...
Yeah, that's good, Mark, because people, places, and things really do matter.
Yeah.
But if you haven't changed what's going on inside of you, wherever you go, you're going to end up with the same people, places, and things.
That's right.
It's always that way. And so, this all really came, crashing down on me when, everybody in my life finally said no. My mother moved from her home so I couldn't find her because she couldn't tell me no.
Wow.
She literally moved from her own home. So her son couldn't find her because if I did and I asked her for money, she couldn't tell me no. My father, I remember calling him from South Carolina. I'm sorry, I was in Florida at the time. I called my dad and I said, "Dad, if you don't help me tonight, I'm going to die." And my father said to me, "You'd be better off dead because you're killing us." And boy, I knew that night, like, it's over. Like, I am done. I'm not going to get anything from anybody. Now, that didn't stop me in that moment, but I knew my bridges had been burned.
Yeah.
What it did is it set me off on a journey to try to get well, and which did not happen.
Yeah.
For an extended period of time. I kept really working at it, trying to get well, and a lot of things happened in between that I could talk about, from being sober for a little while, getting married, then falling back into drugs again, getting divorced, and family separate, hurting more people, and it was just this cycle. It was this cycle that just would never end. It would never end. And so, ultimately it was December 22nd. And this is obviously making a very long story short, But ultimately it was December 22nd, 2002, at 11:40 a.m. when I decided that, the people, places, and things were going to shift a little bit. And, I went to church. I was trying to...
Why? Okay, I was supposed to say, why that?
Anything.
Okay.
Really.
Yeah.
Anything.
Was there a faith background that you...
None.
Okay. So you're like, other people have found help here.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll help me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you just brought that up. Like, so I mentioned earlier that my grandmother raised me. Like, so I was raised in a church parsonage. The Methodist Church in Lexington, New York. My grandmother rented it because the minister didn't live there. My miracle was about 10 feet away. Out the door and to the right was the church. And I never turned that way. My grandmother used to tell me we would be home and on Sunday, and the people would be coming to church and parking in the parking lot, and she would look out the door and she would say, "That's for weak people."
Wow.
She was right.
Yeah.
I just didn't know I was weak.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she would say things like, "See those people? They use God as a crutch." She was right. You know, all of these sayings, you know, that people, it's like, yeah, you know, I needed the Lord to lean on.
Yeah.
I was weak, and yet, you know, I never ended up there. So anyway, no faith background. Just I tried everything else.
Yeah.
AA, NA, inpatient, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, inpatient programs, outpatient programs, group therapy. I was so suicidal at one point in my life that I was driving up the Northway towards Glens Falls, New York, and literally had this plan that I was going to cross the median and hit a truck, the biggest truck I could find, head on. Ended up at the mental health unit in Saratoga, Four Winds at Saratoga, diagnosed with all kinds of letters of the alphabet on all kinds of medication, and nothing worked for me. I am telling you that every single thing that I tried, I would ultimately end up back at a crack house. That's where I would always end up. And so, you know, the church or religion or something was, let's give it a whirl.
Yeah.
You know, I really didn't have any like belief that was going to make a difference. I was just looking for something else because nothing else was working. And even that, I tried. You know, I went to church. First church I went to, there was like a lot of men there, and they seemed to have a good life. So I just tried to replicate what they were doing, but like I couldn't because it wasn't who I was, and so. Yeah, it just was just a series of so many things that I tried to get well that ultimately, I did end up at a church on that date that I mentioned, December 22nd, 2002. And for whatever reason, I guess I know that reason today because God had a bigger purpose for my life, but on that day, I had an encounter with the Lord where this worship team is singing this song about amazing love. How could it be that you, my King, would die for me? I'm forgiven because you were forsaken. I'm accepted. You were condemned. I'm alive and well. Your spirit lives within me because you died and rose again. And I'm like, wow. And I began to tear up, and I was pretty hard. The streets will make you hard.
Yeah.
I began to tear up, and and I know what I don't know what the audience thinks about this in this moment, but it's my reality, and so I'm just going to say it. At that moment, I saw a picture like you would see on the wall of Jesus. Long hair, robe, sandals. I saw a picture of Jesus open a door in my chest and walk into my heart.
Wow.
And I didn't really know what that meant, honestly, because I tried so many things, but I stopped smoking crack. I don't think I can say I didn't have the desire anymore, but there was something that was sustaining me. It was like I could say no.
Hmm.
and I couldn't understand it.
Right.
I couldn't understand it.
Right.
And ultimately, I was at another church service 3 weeks later, and had this another encounter with God. Very strong, where I was kind of sensing these three words like teacher, pastor, counselor. Didn't know what that meant, but I was with a ministry called Teen Challenge. It's a faith-based ministry with, for men and women with life-controlling problems, and I had one. But I went back to the Teen Challenge Center and talked about what was happening with me, and people are saying, "Now you have a call of God on your life," and I'm like, what does that even mean? I have no clue what that meant,
Yeah.
But I began to listen and follow through with what people were telling me, and here I am today. I was, I think I received, I went to school online, Berean School of the Bible, Global University now, and I think in like 2007, I was like certified as a minister, and then in 2009 I was licensed, and then like in 2013, I think it was, I was ordained, and you know, um, I pastored a church for many, many years, Gospel Lighthouse Church in Hudson Falls, New York, and in February of 2022, received a phone call from the very ministry, Teen Challenge, that helped me get to the other side of what I was going through, and asked if I would consider serving as their next president and CEO. And I certainly wasn't looking for another job, and I thought I would be at Gospel Lighthouse Church, until.
Yeah.
But when that phone call came, and the thought of potentially, having a greater opportunity to tell others what the Lord had done for me, and that He could do it for them too, that appealed to me. Um, and I said yes, and a few interviews later,
Hmm.
was
Here you are.
asked to serve, and yeah, and here I am.
Yeah.
And so, I know that's like a really encapsulated view of, the 61 years that I've been on earth, but it's
Yeah.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful. I'm thankful to have guys like you as friends. Um, the Lord has been really good to me, and if there's some way for me to help our audience, or teenagers, parents, if there's some way that my experience, strength, and hope can, be shared with others, that's what I really
Yeah.
feel the Lord has asked me to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for your story is incredible and inspiring, and just a reminder of why we do what we do and the power of the gospel to change lives, and thankful for that. One of the themes that I heard you mention a couple of times lately of people, places, things. Summarize that a little bit. What do you mean? What does that mean to you? What's the importance of that? And I know we're in the next episode, we're gonna kind of do a deeper dive into how do we help people with addiction, but maybe that'd be helpful for people.
Yeah, the people you hang with, right? The places you go and the things you do, will ultimately reveal, what your life looks like. We used to say, you know, uh, tell me who you hang with, um, and I'll tell you what your life looks like. But I've been thinking about this recently because of some things in my life that, I've been dealing with in a health way. So last year I was diagnosed with melanoma, and and it was taken care of, and but I have to go for regular checkups now. And so I just went for this checkup, and I'm thinking everything's okay. And and sure enough, there was some things that had to be dealt with. And so it occurred to me that due to sun exposure, I like the sun.
Mhm.
And because I made a conscious decision to spend a lot of time in the sun, I exposed myself to what I'm dealing with right now. And I think I would like to just say to all of our viewers out here, and for parents, teenagers, you know, what you expose yourself to
Mm.
will probably become your reality.
Mm.
I just came from a dermatologist yesterday, and what I exposed myself to had to be cut out of me.
Mm.
I sit here this morning with stitches in my back because it had to be removed, um, or it could potentially take my life.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lesson for all of us in many areas of our lives that if you expose yourself to the wrong things, you will either have to have them cut out of your life or removed from your life, or they might take your life.
Mm.
So my encouragement to everybody as we just close out this session is that be careful what you expose yourself to.
Mm.
Be careful of the people you expose yourself to. Be careful to the places you expose yourself to. And be careful of the things you expose yourself to. Because if you choose the right people and the right places and the right things, you will have chosen life. If you choose the wrong people, the wrong places, and the wrong things, there's a good chance you've chosen death. Choose life.
Mm.
Well said. Well said. Well, we're excited, Paul. I know it's a little bit of a different episode for those of you who typically listen, but we felt it was really important
Yeah.
for you to hear Paul's story and understand when someone speaks on a topic like this, it's important that they actually know what they're talking about. And so not only have you been there, but now your job full time is helping people who are in the midst of addiction struggle. And so it's been great. It's inspiring and encouraging. And in the next episode, come back, we're going to do a deeper dive into each of these three areas and really lean into how do we help young people who are going through addiction or maybe are on a pre-addiction path. And so, Paul, thanks so much.
Yeah, you're
will
welcome.
see you on the next episode.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks so much.